Hi, all, and welcome to our webinar, What Matters 2023 U.S. Edition. My name is Greg Heist. I'm Chief Innovation Officer here at Gongus, and we're excited to be here today to share some of the trends that are most influencing U.S. consumers this year. And before we begin, a few housekeeping items. We'll send out the recording of this webinar in the coming days, along with a copy of the full What Matters Global report. And during our conversation today and during the presentation, feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat here. We'll monitor that and answer questions at the end. And now I have the pleasure of introducing two of my colleagues and who are going to be our presenters today, Michael Thomas and Patricia Salamone. So let me just quickly introduce each of them. So Michael Thomas is Senior Vice President at Space Doctors, a cultural and creative arm of Insights Consulting. With a strong background in anthropology, research, and design, Michael leads teams to inform business and design direction with a mission to scale and integrate human-centered research perspectives and approaches. And Patricia Salamone is a director of client consulting at Gongus, a part of Insights Consulting, where she works across the financial services, CPG, media, and telecom sectors to find innovation through the lens of human needs. So without further ado, pass it off to Michael.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So we're as inundated with reports of trends as we are with data, and I'm sure you are as well. I personally receive trend reports all the time. And more often than not, the trends aren't all that mysterious, and less so for anyone who spends a lot of time online. And there was a time, now since past, where information was quite expensive or really hard to come by. This before the internet, before robust online searching and P2P networks and the explosion in data and insights. The trends in and of themselves really meant something. Not so much the case anymore, I think. Instead of reporting on trends, we set out instead to understand what matters. And while that is very closely related to trends, it's a bit of a different question, and it's tied closely with shifts in cultural meaning and with the context that imbues trends with some relevance. So there's no doubt that we're living in a time of transition and it's no surprise, with technological, environmental, economic, political, ideological, and even epidemiological upset. People are critically evaluating what type of future they want. So there's little left to take for granted. And so the question regarding the future or futures really presses upon us, I think. So the question is, what type of world do we want? So this report then is a bit less about describing mere trends than it is about providing the insight you need regarding this cultural moment and the emerging cultural shifts accompanying the trends that can inspire you to create a more meaningful world and can help position you as an agent of transition from crisis and disintegration toward meaning and regeneration. So today, we'll be taking you through 4 of our 12 trends. And as we do so, I encourage you to think through, what could this mean for my brand? What role can we play in this transition? But first, I'd like to take you through the framework and methodology that we use to develop our understanding of the role of meaning and the ways in which it fundamentally structures really what matters. So to start, we've triangulated diverse sources of psychological and anthropological material, and we've identified 4 drivers of meaning that you see here that underpin what people are looking for. So the first of these is stronger connections. So surely we've all experienced relationships that are draining, or leave us exhausted, diminish us, or otherwise absorb and reduce us. The driver for meaning here is the recognition and desire for relationships that instead enrich and energize us. The second driver you'll see next to that is what we call deeper narratives. So this driver refers to the deconstruction of classifications and social categories, as well as the resultant need for narratives that describe people with greater nuance and flexibility, rather than define people in ways perceived as limited or bounded. And we see this across many social categories, such as gender and appearance and ideology and sexuality and more. And with this reconstitution of social classification comes a critical eye towards social institutions as well. Large-scale institutions are increasingly perceived as unable to serve our needs at best and untrustworthy, exploitative, or inhuman in the worst cases. So people are looking for supportive systems that give back rather than extract or mislead. And then finally, our 4th dimension of meaning making is what we're calling wonder integrated. So the anxieties, the concerns, and the uncertainties of this profoundly disrupted social context, layered over with this suspicion of language and categories and institutions, is really drawing people to rediscover the human need for wonder, for the transcendent, the magical, and the spiritual beyond their mere therapeutic functionality, but for the ways in which they help explain, account for, and give meaning to our experiences in the world. So the question for you here, I think for your brand, for your research and development, for experience design, is how do you start acting in light of these drivers? So here on this slide, you can see that we've identified 12 trends that are organized according to these 4 drivers here. Some of these you'll find are quite new, and some of them are evolutions of what may otherwise be familiar trends. Throughout this, we encourage you to consider these trends not merely as descriptions of some emerging phenomena in the world, there's certainly that for sure, but also as guidelines or trajectories of cultural meaning. And hopefully these will guide you toward creative resonance with your emerging audience. Where these trends are presented as describing what matters for creating a future regenerative world that people want to live in, they're voiced here from the perspective of people, rather than the voice of a disinterested narrator. So likewise, we invite an interpretation that is collaborative, generative, and fundamentally interested. So today we're going to discuss 4 of these trends to give you a sense of what to expect. But first, we'll talk a brief note on the methodology here. So in order to frame our perspective from a deeply cultural and a broadly geographic lens, we convened a global team of expert cultural analysts, semioticians, and anthropologists from Space Doctors, which is part of Insights Consulting, to develop an understanding of the interaction of global market forces, market categories, and cultural imaginaries. Second, we defined the 4 drivers of human meaning that we mentioned earlier, and these are synthesized from diverse popular and academic scholarship. So with these, we crafted structured conversations with 14 diverse leading-edge consumers that are drawn from our in-house and global Illum network, where we challenged and contextualized multiple themes through an online co-creation session. So these sessions included creative participatory tasks to elicit a vision of what they wanted to see from brands in the future. And then finally, we quantified our insights across 17 different markets with a total of over 15,000 participants to understand how these trends are manifesting across different regions, different age groups, and across one another. And so we've mapped these trends across the world and in the US, and I'll talk a little bit about this map. So the horizontal axis represents attitude, by which we mean the extent to which people find this trend important in giving meaning to their life. And on the vertical axis, we've mapped the trend's impact on people's behavior. And by this, we mean the extent to which people act upon these trends. So together, these define 4 quadrants that collectively map the relative presence and position along an adoption journey. The map allows us to see, for example, the nascent trends in the bottom left quadrant, which have a low attitudinal adoption and a low impact on behavior. So these are trends to pay attention to if you're interested in leading with the very early signals among early adopters. In the top left, going straight up from there, we see trends that are lower in attitudinal adoption, but they're higher in terms of engagement and behavioral impact. So this quadrant represents a promising space to occupy if your brand is looking to meaningfully collaborate and co-create with a very passionate niche of specialist community. In the bottom right of the map, this is directly diagonal, we see trends that are very high in attitudinal adoption, but they're lower in impact and behavior. So this represents trends wherein people are highly engaged at the ideal or conceptual level, but not necessarily acting on it yet. So the role here for a brand in terms of engagement is to provide support in that conversion from ideals into action. And finally, in the top right, we have the expanding trends, which are both high in attitudinal adoption and high in behavioral impact. So these are trends that are present across mainstream dominant culture and discourse, and this represents spaces that a brand just needs to be aware of. So here we can see the global map of trends across this field. And the next slide, we've mapped these trends in North America, and you can see that there are some strong similarities. And today we'll focus on just 4 of these: Life Rewilded, Adaptive Essentials, Ever-Evolving Script, and Social Health. Greg?
Thanks, Michael. So we took a look at all of these global trends through a US lens, and Patricia will spend some time unpacking a bit more and illustrate these with some examples. So we're going to do is start here. And as Michael mentioned, we're from this sort of driver of stronger connections. As Michael mentioned, we're more connected than ever, yet feeling lonely and detached. And this idea of enriched connections is really the how that energize why. So that's kind of like the how and the why. And from social media to remote working, all of these have a really profound impact on how we connect and how we form relationships. So the trend of honest sense making is about expanding our horizons, being open and curious about customs and beliefs beyond our own world. So we want to reach with the goal of reaching a common understanding. Collaborative magic, it builds on our diversity of bringing together ideas, embracing the synergies to create stronger and more powerful ideas in like online creative ecosystems. And Patricia is going to do a dive into the trend of social health, which is looking at our well-being through the social lens. Patricia, I think you're on mute.
Well, that's not cool. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you and I appreciate Michael. I'll extend my thanks to everyone for being here and for taking the time to listen to us. Our social health is important, as Michael and Greg have called it out, in part because of that loneliness and anxiety are on the rise. And we're getting that socialization plays a huge role there. We're becoming more intentional about our relationships and their role, how they enrich us, right? Essentially, we're becoming more choosy about what and how and who we develop those relationships. In his 1960 book, Four Loves, C.S. Lewis tells us that friendship is unnecessary. It's like philosophy, like art, that it has no survival value, but rather it is one of those things that gives value to survival. I thought that was really great perspective, not only for the days of 1960s, but also now as we think about how social health evolves for us. And when you dig into where the trend sits for us in the US, we see it as an emerging trend. People understand it, it's socialized as an idea. However, it's not always a compelling thing to act on. We see some starts to it, but yet brands have an opportunity here to connect people and to help them find ways to act on it. And we see that as consumers playing out in several different sectors, and how it's playing out is not surprising. Perhaps what's also not very surprising to us anymore is that our relationships and how happy we are in them has such a powerful influence on our health. Robert Waldinger, who's a psychiatrist at Mass Gen, and he's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, had conducted a survey that shows us the more connected we feel in our 50s is directly related to how healthy we are in our 80s. His comment was, taking care of your body is important, but tending to your relationships is part of self-care as well. Is that a revelation? Sure it is. Good things for us to think about. And showing us a few ways of how that comes to life. First, here we see some focused communities that are starting to become the norm rather than what was known as used to be exclusive or cultish. On the top, the Shine Living movement is this mission to nourish from the inside out. It's moving from what they served in their restaurants to adding products, classes, education, and lifestyle together into a community where they encourage and empower every area of everyone's life. Underneath that, you see Serenity, a play on Serenity, which is a healthy living community in Georgia. And it's focused on well-being and honoring nature. In this community where you can live, and there's others that are popping up like it, you're surrounded by people of all ages with the same interests and the same desire for nurturing each other, for having connectedness and being connected to the world. In the next example, we see wellness at the center. You think about technology, you think about other global forces as the strings of, as they tug on the strings of our connectedness. Spartan is one wellness community that's rallying around physical goals within a community of like-minded people and using that space to encourage and nurture. And Greg, I'll say, I think you have some personal experience with this example in particular, if you could tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I do. There's actually a Spartan training gym very near where we live, and my wife and children have all trained for the last couple of years at that gym. And one of the things that stands out about it is that it really is, as you mentioned, Patricia, really about this idea of helping people transcend their limits. And it's really more about that sort of community and friendship and support, really almost like in a self-help or personal growth sort of dimension, as much as it is about the physical development. So interesting stuff for sure. So with that, why don't we move on to our next theme? So our next theme is called deeper narratives. And so roles are definitely changing as the perspectives on identity change. So we're clearly seeing and clearly breaking up with how previous generations have viewed gender, nationality, race, appearance, and the like, and really looking to put together our own new ways of defining who we are and what we want in terms of flexibility in those definitions. Three trends emerged from the deeper narratives theme. The first one is into the nuance, which is about how we're looking more deeply at how we feel, think, and function, and why, through multiple lenses. We want a more nuanced sense of life through our experience. The next one, free from assumptions, is about showing us moving away from labels that don't fit our complexity, and we're looking for more free and fluid narratives. And Patricia is going to take us further into the third one, which is called the ever-evolving script. And you know, as I was looking through the report, one of the things I could relate to is this idea of post-pandemic or through the pandemic, I've become much more of a house husband, and I can clearly identify with how, you know, where we are in this period of time allows this fluidity of our roles and our place in the world to fit in a very different way. So Patricia, you want to talk more about that?
Thanks, Greg. There's your role changing for sure. And then I think about the extreme ends of the spectrum as we are letting go of all of the traditional milestones and life moments, education, marriage, family. They're no longer aspirational for everybody, or the timing of them has changed, or they simply are becoming more fluid. I have this really highly functioning 10-year-old niece. She's so clear about who she is, and it's important to her and to share that, but it's changing every day for her. It's flexible. Some days she's a ballerina, she's graceful, she's flowy, and that's her word, not mine. The next day she's a fireman, she's tough, she wants to help and save her siblings, but she's always serving other people, and she's always evolving who that person that she is. Then I think on the other side of that, I have an aunt who was over 50 when or over 90 rather, when she passed. And she defined the female role as we know it. And when I think about when she grew up, was especially defiant. She had no romantic relationships of any kind. She served in the Navy. She had no children of her own. But yet I saw the complexity of how she shifted her role depending on whether she was with us kids or she was engaged in the community. How she wanted to live, how she wanted to serve that community was so ahead of her time. She didn't want marriage or children, or really she did her own investing. She was kind of very independent that way, and it went really well for her. But what she did lean into was that flexibility to create her own moments that mattered. And as did my niece Maddie. Those are the types of shifting moments that brands can learn from. And when you think about how that sits for us, we're right on the bubble in the US between an emerging and expanding trend. So people understand it and they're acting on it. It's socialized, but there's more than just awareness for brands and room for them to grow to help support in changing scripts and connection to those, what I would call new as opposed to non-traditional needs. You see this playing out in several sectors, and given what we're talking about, and given when people marry has changed, not having children by choice is becoming more mainstream, and we've got the 60-year-old med student out there on their third career. Of course, financial services edges out media, but it includes a lot of other sectors that can play here. And we've got some pretty interesting examples that we can dig into. For starters, it might not be retirement anymore. Serena has evolved from tennis, and she has called us out. It is an unmodern way to think about how her evolution is really not retirement. It's about what she's going to move on to, and she's not done. And she makes that very clear to us. In the meantime, the older Serenas or the older generations of the world are redefining what it means to be retired. And maybe it means being rewired. We see it coming up in apps like Silver Nest, which is geared toward older generations to make home sharing a more common practice. It helps people find roommates with similar lifestyles or goals. And it often pairs those different generations together. So you'll see college students with seniors seeking a lot of the same lifestyle things and things they want to do together and wanting to save money and resources at the same time. On the other side of that, what you see is this really cool app where kids are becoming the investors, right? Go Henry is a prepaid debit card, and it's a financial learning app which is designed for kids that are 6 to 18. The app allows an adult to reward them or pay them the pocket money directly, but it also gives the kids good money habits, saving habits, and it gives them a gauge on where they are, but they get to choose, and they're in control of it. Lots of good examples we could talk about here, but I think we can move on to our next theme, Greg.
Sounds good. So our sort of next key driver is supportive systems. And so there's deep awareness of the flaws in our system. We want pragmatic solutions that help us and also support our systems. So as we explore this theme, local flourishing looks at our growing need to become more self-sustaining. We need to build out our local support systems in a way that will help fill the gaps of limited global systems. And then along with that, interconnected well-being is focused on a broader understanding of health and well-being and how interconnected it all is. And Patricia, maybe you can take us through the details of adaptable essentials.
Yes, indeed. We've got COVID. There's the multiple crises that we're facing locally and worldwide every day. We're looking not only for ways to survive, but we're also trying to be more conscious with what we consume, and we're looking for a super high quality of life. We want to be ready for any surprise, any change, the next COVID, and we want brands that we can count on that understand this and will quickly meet us where we are and adapt to where we are. This is, if we think about it from a US perspective, this is definitely a trend that we understand. It's expanding. We get it. We want more of it. And in fact, what we're seeing is that consumers are inclined not to engage with a brand who can't provide us what is truly essential to us, enhance us, and give back both personally and globally. This plays out for many consumers in a lot of ways, but given the uncertainty of the economy and how things are going to unfold, that constant threat we're under of environmental degradation, it could be why financial services pops up to the top, followed by other sectors that would have an impact on our sustainability. And there's just lots of connections there. But we'll speak to finance first. And this example is Visa's Future Card. It's helping make sustainable decisions and purchases more accessible and affordable for everyone. It works differently than a revolving card by linking directly to a bank account. So while there's no credit extended, there's lots of rewards that are known for credit cards available, and they're granted immediately. It does some pretty cool stuff. So it's designed around the statistic that consumer choice impacts 66% of all of our carbon emissions. Cardholders ultimately earn 6% cash back on select partner brands, 5% cash back on what they call climate smart spending purchases. So that could be public transportation, electronic charging, bikes, scooters, all the way down to plant-based meat, dairy, and eggs. And then finally, there's a 1% cash back on every other purchase that they have. The future score which is a feature that provides through a mobile app the ability for cardholders to track, measure, and reduce their carbon footprint based on their spending habits and tips and tricks on where and what to buy. And then I want to jump to the truly essential, which is toilet paper. Bamboo and Who Gives a Crap are two sustainable toilet paper companies that make the staple out of bamboo. Saves all of our forests and lots of other precious resources. So who knew you can have designer toilet paper that is recycled, and in the case of Who Gives a Crap, they give back by helping the developing world build toilets. Bamboo goes beyond toilet paper, offers paper towel, and then supports the Clean Air Task Force. Both companies also offer bidets and other products that eliminate the need for as much toilet paper, if any toilet paper at all. So good stuff here. Designer toilet paper. I'm just going to say I'm an advocate. Greg, I don't know if you have anything to top that there.
Cannot top that. That is the definition of an adaptable essential, both of those. So awesome example. All right, let's go to our fourth driver here, which is Wonder Integrated. So increasingly, we're seeking a connection to nature and ways to stimulate our senses in order to ground ourselves. And this category, this set of drivers is really all about the wonder and curiosity we want to establish and to establish meaning for ourselves. So sensory intensity that takes us back to the physical experience of life to offset the digital overload, engaging all of our senses in creative ways. Embracing the universe is a trend that is about giving us a grounding as we navigate uncertainty. As brands, what can we do to show people what is beyond our reality? And then Patricia is going to take us through a really interesting trend, which is called Life Rewilded.
Thanks, Greg. I think I like to think about this as acceptance and exploration. You know, we're looking at and exploring nature in new ways. We're looking for that rewilding, kind of laddering up to that wonderment that Michael talked about. We want it to be part of our everyday life. It doesn't necessarily mean just nature. It's just about our broader environment entirely. And when we look at how the US sits in this trend, we're very much embracing. I think we can go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Yep, no worries. I think that we're embracing the concept as with our evolving script. It's expanding. We want to see more and get more of it. And like I said, it doesn't have to be just about nature. If you go to where consumers are relating to this, they're identifying with several different places that we can play in the space, and home improvement pops here, as well as transport and travel. We hear so much about recycling, upcycling, reuse, repurpose, eco-friendly shipping when you think about Amazon Day, electric cars, purpose-driven vacations. It definitely goes beyond nature, and it's so what we encourage brands to think about is how can we have less impact and encourage building relationships with consumers within this world that's evolving so much. We got kind of a cool example here that we want to talk about. There's so many different ways we could talk about this, but urban farms, and I'm proudly to say it's right here in the great state of Michigan where this took off, in the city of Detroit, where they've taken land that was abandoned as a result of the economic downturns in Michigan over the years. They've turned it into a community farm, and that farm isn't just about the farming itself. It's focused on addressing food insecurity and sovereignty. The Michigan Urban Farming Initiative brought the beauty and brought life to these spaces that were once really scary eyesores, and they were considered very dangerous. And it unites this community around this common goal of bringing healthy food to every table in these challenged areas of Detroit. There's several other new cities where we're seeing this pop up. One here that I'd like to call out is in Belgium. As many of you know, we are Insights Consulting Group. Ganges is part of Insights Consulting Group, and that's right in Belgium. So we are crossing lots of boundaries there. We really appreciate everybody listening so far. We've shared out how we've gotten to examples that are meant really to inspire. Michael, I want to ask you if I can turn it back to you and have you talk a little bit about the so what. Why is it that we need to do something about all of this? And then maybe we can jump into questions.
Yeah, sure thing. So that is kind of the question. So where do we go from here? So to my mind, whether you're coming from R&D or from business strategy, design, or customer experience, brand, or marketing, what we intend is that these trends and what matters can invite you to ask questions like, are we creating the right thing? And so that first question is about, what does this mean for your portfolio? Are you creating the right artifacts? Are you creating the right experiences? Are you creating the right services for the world that we want to live in, that we want to co-create together? And I think once we establish that, the next question is, are we creating the thing right? Which is how do you deliver on your brand's commitment to being part of a future that people actually want? And then finally, are we communicating about it in the right way? So how are you ensuring that this commitment that you're making and what you're building in the place you're asserting in the world is intelligible, that it resonates, and that it inspires? And so in short, and what we're encouraging to ask is like, well, what are the emerging needs in these spaces? That's something I think that we can certainly help answer.